Hello, welcome to part 2 of I'm writing a book. What do I do for NaNoWriMo? Me too. I get you. Great. Glad to see you've made it from my vibes video. Not my best. Anyway, it's cool. Now let's talk about characters. Characters are my favorite thing to figure out. I am a simmer at heart. I absolutely love playing The Sims. It is one of my I think that it's probably my second most expensive hobby following books. And I love making characters in The Sims. It's so fun to visualize them. But where do I go from there? I have a general idea of what they might look like. They might have blonde hair, blue eyes, look like me. I don't know. If I am starting off a new story, I might have a loose idea of some characters that I'm gonna want. But how do I make them from point A to point B, ready for a story, ready for a plot, ready to take on the world? Well, it starts really easy. One, I don't play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons or other tabletop RPGs, but I sure as hell am going to create a character as if that's what they are. I'm gonna go in to, I have two that I really like, and then I'll go into like some deeper question stuff that I like to do, but there's this specific character table thing. I'm doing great. But this is how I run my characters through, so that I can kind of get an idea of who I want them to be, more like what I want their values to be, so on and so forth. So this one specifically starts pretty easy with like name, age. If you're doing any Dungeons and Dragons, so on so forth, this is a great resource for that, for making an original character. If you've never made an original character, this is so helpful because it really gives you a starting point. A lot of these might not make sense to you if you don't play Dungeons and Dragons though, and you can just completely ignore them. But you can go through and say like, what kind of, like, are they a strong character? What is their beauty level or intelligence level? What's their style? How funny are they? Are they more cowardly or are they more brave? Just going through and giving them like a very basic rundown, and this is so subject to change at this point, but giving them a rough idea of who they are at the core, what priorities they have, so on and so forth. It is so helpful when I start out with a character, because now I can just kind of visualize who they might be. I will show you an example of like my filled out character sheet, and then you can kind of see one of mine completely, like just what I picture when I think of one of my characters. I have some of these filled out of characters whose names have changed since then, and that's just, sometimes that happens. Sometimes I get a little bit too excited when I random name generator some names, and I think that I like them, and then 5 seconds later I change them. I'm kidding, that was more like 5 months later. But then I also use this other character development chart, a lot of similar information, but I think gives me better background, so I'm able to fill in what kind of family they have, and it starts making me think of questions and possibilities that I wouldn't maybe not necessarily normally think of. These kinds of things are really good starting points for me, so that I can think of like, okay, what's their favorite color gonna be? Because I'm not gonna normally figure that out. It will likely never come up in the book. Like, there is a very slim chance that the occupation of their parents will come up in my story, but sometimes it might, and sometimes it's nice to just have little random facts that you can just kind of throw into your story. I personally just love the domestic side of books, and so that's something that I often just target. I love when my books just show like a little bit of humanity between characters that you might not normally see, but just like those tiny little glimpses of like, the world's on fire, but I am here in this moment with you, and here is a very funny inside joke that has been created and is now like an ongoing bit in a story. I just love those kinds of moments, so I always want to have this kind of information in my back pocket in case a moment like that arises and I can kind of just give into that. I write selfishly. I should say that. I'm a selfish writer. I'm writing my story for me that I can hopefully one day share with the world and they will find the same kind of enjoyment. But when we're talking NaNoWriMo, we're talking first draft, baby. First drafts, that's for you. You write a first draft for you, not for anybody else. That first draft is all yours so that the second draft can be whatever it needs to become. So this is my starting point when I start writing my characters. And then I kind of start going into like, okay, what's their personality going to be like? Are they going to be super nice all the time? Are they going to be studious? Are they going to be mean? Are they going to be a complete brat, spoiled rotten? Those kinds of things. I'm going to assign them some positive personality traits. I'm going to assign them some flaws. I'm going to give them some weird character quirks that just are always there and you don't notice them. They're very subtle, but sometimes you're like, holy shit, why do they keep doing that? That's the kind of stuff that I want my characters to have, even if it's not explored on the page. Even if you don't realize that one of my character is always chewing gum. You don't notice half the time, but it is a fact of who they are. And I just want to be able to give them that random depth, that random like, okay, yeah, this could be a real person and I can easily understand who they are and I can understand where they need to go and give them that character development. If they have flaws, which your characters should always have flaws, good and bad. Flaws don't always have to be like black and white. You can have a flaw that you can have a characteristic that is so good, but that so good characteristic can still do bad. Basically don't write a Mary Sue. Write a fun character that has problems. Make messes. Oh my god. Who said it? Was it Neil Gaiman? Was it V.E. Schwab? Some author on Twitter once was like, how to write a story, like how to write good characters, and it's like, basically destroy everything your characters love. If they take something for granted, take it away from them. Ruin them to their core. Be mean to your characters that you love so deeply. It's hilarious. Anyway, sidetrack. So once I kind of have an idea of my character's skills, I guess you could call them, just personality, flaws, so on. I have a Pinterest board. Again, all of my resources are on Pinterest, which is linked in the description if you want to look at it and get an idea, find places to start. I have so many questionnaires saved on Pinterest. No, I absolutely do not use them all. Sometimes I will just kind of cherry pick. There's some that are very simple where it's like, name and age, describe where you're from, describe your family, who's your best friends. Some are a little bit more specific, a little bit more personal. It really depends how well you want to know your character. I like to leave some wiggle room of like mystery, of like, I'm gonna figure that out along the way. But sometimes I do want to know what people perceive my character. Like, if my character walks into a full ballroom, what is everybody's first impression of them going to be? But I have a lot of NPCs, side characters, that I don't care so much about their specifics. But I still want each of my side characters to have a purpose. I want them to have their own motives. I want them to have purpose. I want them to have their own side quests that you never know about, that you don't see, because I want to make sure that any character that I present into my story is there for a reason, has something to offer, has something for maybe somebody else to relate to. I have a lot of, my current project is very queer norm, is very like safe. There's no racism, there's no fat phobia, there's no transphobia. Like, that does not exist in my world because I don't want to explore that. I don't want to write about that. I just like want my characters to have their own silly little bad things going on that are completely out of their control, but manageable, but not heartbreaking and annoying. I just want them to exist in a nicer place than what I currently have to exist in. So when I'm writing a side character, they might be trans. I'm not writing the trans story, but I want there to be that representation for somebody who picks up my story to go, wow, that character is so fucking cool. And to have that just exist normally. And I think that needs to be more of a thing. You should have black characters if you're a white author. You should have black side characters that just exist and live happy, perfect little lives, but still have like their own thing going on and do not exist just to give the main characters more depth. And also don't just fucking die. Stop doing that. Okay, some of the questionnaires will be like, what's your ideal day? And I will give my characters that. Some of my personal favorite writing prompts are character backstories, if you will. So I'm currently writing my story, and it takes off at like a very particular point. But I'm writing 10 days before it happens, because I want to know what each of my characters are doing leading up to this big event, even if those stories, those chapters, don't exist in the final product or whatever. I don't know how I'm publishing these things. I'm probably just going to release it all on Wattpad or something fun, because that's fun. Anyway, but I'm writing many days before the big event because I want to see what a typical day for my character looks like, so that I know what I'm going into the story with, what kind of headspace they're already in pre, oh no, shit's hit the fan. So some of the things are like, is your character a dog person or a cat person? Are they more of an indoor or outdoor person? I love knowing that like nitty gritty stuff, but you don't need that as when you're writing a character. You don't need to know their absolute everything, but there are definitely some questions that you should have answered, things that you should know, especially as you're building out your world. Knowing what your character's motives, what side characters' motives are, having an idea of some of these things is actually going to help later when you get to the world building. World building is so much fun, but so much stress, and being able to have a grasp on just like little things. What's your character's favorite holiday? Is it made up? Now you have lore to add to your world building that isn't necessarily even intentional. I ended up making a random holiday, and now I have an entire scene dedicated to that. And now because of that particular scene, I've got 2 different conversations that a character is going to have at a later date, as well as an entire lore backstory for my world. It's crazy. I sometimes it's just brains just do brain things. It's crazy. But getting to know your character is going to put you in the best position. Yes, it's time consuming. No, you're not always going to have the answers. Sometimes you're going to learn what is their fear. You might not know right now, but you might find out when they're at the climax of their story, getting ready to fight the big bad of whatever your story has going on, and you go, oh, yeah, they're probably scared of spiders. And suddenly you've created this character's own personal little hell, because now they have to deal with this very inconsequential little problem of a spider in the corner of their room right before they have to go off and face their big bad villain. And it just adds a lot to a character when you know just silly little things about them. Sometimes it really can just go a long way. I don't know how to explain these things. I'm rambling so much. But the more that you can solidify your character, your main character, the more you're going to be able to interact with other people and figure out, like, they're not going to get along with everyone, so why do some characters click for them and, like, become friends, and why do some characters not? Why do some side characters stick around, and what do they do when they're off the page? You don't want to just have a blank slate of a character going into a story. You want somebody who's just layered, because people are complex. We are not contrarians, controversial. We're not controversial. We are complex, and we can be two things at once. What I'm saying is, characters, humans, people, we are not one-dimensional. We are not simple creatures. I am constantly at battle with myself because I am two things at the same time that should not be possible, and yet somehow that's just who we are. That's how it works. So know about how your character feels about religion, how your character feels about the politics, about the environment around them, because it's going to help build out your world and flesh out a story that you don't know yet is there. And I love this stuff. It's so dumb, but I know what my favorite character scents are. So now, if my character S meets somebody who smells a little bit like oranges, she's gonna feel a certain way because she loves oranges. Like, that's one of her favorite fruits. And fruits are hard to come by in our world, so like that's a big deal. And boom. There's so much already right there of just, okay, why are fruits a big deal? Why don't they have fruits everywhere? What's going on with that? Why do I want this side character that smells like oranges to join us on our adventure now? Because they've got this very weird connection to each other. Maybe one character meets somebody and they've got a really weird amount of knowledge of a family member, but nobody will talk about it. Everybody knows this family, but no one's going to talk about why they know their family, and they're not going to be the one to spill the beans. I personally have the most fun in this stage when I'm building my character's background and just getting to know them and learning who they already know and who they can meet and get along with, who they can meet and not get along with. How can I add little conflicts along the way that are just going to throw some wrenches into their plans? I love it. I'm such a nerd for this stuff. In Google Docs right now, I have a template that I've been using that just has personal questions so that I can get to know my characters. Some of them don't matter as much, but I just like going through this. It doesn't take too long for me, and now I have a base of what they're about. Are they a cuddler? What are they scared of? What's their favorite alcoholic drink? What's their second favorite food? Not their first, but their second. How do they feel about polyamory? What brings them joy? What's by their bedside table? Random little questions like these. I find it's easiest to write a story when I can get in the character's head. And I'm gonna say it so loud. Motivations. Motivations are the number one reason why a character is going to be good and make sense. I have 6 main characters in the story I'm currently working on. And I have to figure out, why are they going on this quest? Why did they accept? What is worth it? Like, why would they invest their time and energy into this thing that has nothing to do with them? What's their motives? Because I can build so much around why my characters are doing things, and I can cause conflict between them. I can figure out ways to manipulate, that sounds so bad, but I can find ways to manipulate them to do different things and have my characters get along or fight or cause absolute harm and damage later down the road, because different motives are going to have different effects on my story. One of my character's motives is her family. She's doing this to protect her family. One of them is a spy for the higher class and has to report back on their findings. So now I have like a reason for these certain people to be going on this adventure when normally they would never leave their home. They would never do this. One of them is a major introvert, and she's gonna go because she needs to succeed in her goals by rising to the top, whatever that's gonna mean. And sometimes that means going on a crazy quest that might kill you. And that's just, having that base knowledge is going to get me so much further when I'm writing my story, because now I understand why my characters are there. If you are writing a story, you've got your vibes. You want it to be a cottagecore book. So obviously your main character is going to be a baker because she's cottagecore as hell. And she wears really cute little dresses all the time. Great. How does she deal with her day-to-day? How does she like her tea? What's her favorite food? What is she really scared of when she's alone? What is going to cause conflict that you haven't planned for? Because I find personally finding a plot for a book a little bit harder than finding everything else. I can give you a character with 10 backstories and 5,000 friends, and I can tell you that my plot is, well, like, I want her house to burn down, and then I want her to fight the nobles in the north, but I don't actually know why. I don't know how that's gonna happen. Okay, well, maybe my character is in a band and she performs often at any, like, social event. Okay, well, now I can get her foot into the door of the higher class to figure out why it is they despise each other so much. And then I can kind of go from there. I just need starting points, and those starting points are gonna often come from my character and what type of environment I'm building. And I know that might sound silly, and I've been rambling for so long, but that's how I do it. I just think that having clear, concise characters is going to help when you are writing your story, because you're going to have a better understanding of what's going on in their head. If you don't know these answers, neither does your character, and now your character won't have a personality in their next interaction or in the next town. They need to have some of this. No, you don't have to go, like, this deep all the time, but it gives your character life, and it gives your character what I find is often missing in books, and that's just something to connect to, something to relate to, a reason for rooting for them and wanting to be in their head. I'm obviously talking about, like, I personally write in the first person most because that's the easiest for me, but when I read a book in third person, I often struggle with connecting to a character because I'm not so closely in their head. But if I'm able to notice when they're interacting with their best friend that they have this inside joke that I'm not in on yet, like, I'm gonna pick up on that even if it's in third person. And just small things like that really build and add to everything. So, long-winded way to say, get to know your characters, and by doing so, you're gonna have a good time. I will leave my Pinterest board down below where you can gather some questions, find out more about your character, your main character, and slowly find out more about your side characters. If you've got your main protagonist and they have got 2 best friends and they've got a dad, you need to know a good amount of those characters as well, so that they don't feel like they are just there to further along the main character. You're building a world, you are building a story. You are not just building a, you know, like in video games, like Skyrim, how, like, you talk to an NPC and it's the same dialogue over and over again because they don't actually exist outside of the main character's need. Don't do that in your book. It's fine in a video game, but it's certainly not fine in a book. Anyway, I think that's gonna be it. I hope that this made sense and it was a little bit concise. I'm so sick and I'm so unaware of what I'm doing in life. I'm off the rails. It's fine. Get to know your characters, and I'll see you when we get to the world building. Great.